Well, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, I have another fantastic guest with me today in person, recording remote. That's a first for our show. Sitting here with a wonderful fellow veteran, Vietnam veteran, Marine Corps, and wonderful artist, and you're going to learn all about his work as well. This is Ralph Sirianni, and I want to thank you for joining us today for the Liam and Charlie Show.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, this is a great honor to me. I've had the pleasure of knowing you for, I've actually lost track, but I know we spent a lot of time together during the Iraq and Afghanistan Memorial in Buffalo, which is another one of your beautiful works of art there.
Thank you.
So if I could, for folks that are listening that aren't familiar with you as much as a lot of local veterans are, could we start at the beginning? What led to your decision or the circumstances that surrounded you joining the military and specifically the Marine Corps? How did that come about?
Well, I had wanted to join the Marine Corps. A friend of mine, his dad was in the island hopping in World War II. And I used to go there in the evenings and just sit and talk with his dad. And he would show pictures to us, and it would be about 3 or 4 of us guys. And I think we were about 15, 16. And so I always thought, well, someday I'll probably go in the Marines, you know. And matter of fact, I even painted a Marine Corps emblem in my last year of high school at Kenmore West. And when the time came, I was getting in quite a bit of trouble on the streets. I ran with a fraternity that was more of a little gang, and it seemed like I was, in more trouble than I realized, because it eventually came down to the judge offering me the ultimatum of jail or the service.
Right.
And I thought, well, I was going to go in the Marines anyway. Let me go check. And they would only give it to me for 4 years, which was not what I wanted. I wanted to go in for 2 years. I kind of figured I'd be going to Vietnam. And at that time, I was, like John Wayne or something. I knew I was going to go there and just take care of business. And so I went in for 4 years. And that's how I went in.
Yeah, back in the days of the judge being a bigger recruiter than some of the branches.
Yeah, I thought it would be pretty exclusive to me when I went in. I thought, gee, I'll probably be the only guy here that was given that choice, but not so. Especially when I got to Vietnam, my squad was,
Yeah.
a dirty dozen.
Yeah. Like you said, you had to take care of business. So when you joined, you're basically training in Paris Island, I presume. And,
Yes.
And then you mentioned Vietnam, so that's some of your travels there. And how did that go, and how many years total did you spend there?
In Vietnam?
Well, overall in the service, how did that work? Did you actually get the 4 years, or?
Well, and I came to find out that there was a little trick that the government had to save money. I was discharged after 3 years and 360 days.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, I was wondering if you got the 4 years or just shy.
Yeah, no, they saved some money in the long run. I mean, geez, it could have been pennies, compared to what they were spending on bombs and everything.
Yeah, the bean counters figured that out. Yeah. So when you were over there, or even in training, did you find yourself within your own group? Did you find any particular leaders or lessons that you actually benefited from, even post-service? Was there someone or some lesson that you took out of that time in the service that kind of gave you a better understanding of other parts of life?
2 guys. One, when I got to my squad, when I first got there, and then the other, my drill instructor, Sergeant Apple. And
Great name.
yeah, great guy too. He was the most feared DI. You know, everybody had 3 DIs in their barracks, and there was always one out of the 3 that you just dread knowing they're on duty, and that was him. But we are dear friends today. We've been in touch for, we've been in touch for a long time. We've seen each other since. You know, he and his wife came here right before COVID, and you know, spent a lot of time with them, and so he was the one that really had a lot to do with preparing us. You know, there were just times in Vietnam where I thought about him and what he taught us, and it helped out, especially when I became squad leader. But then when I got to Vietnam, I remember, again, now I was this guy just pounding my chest and let me at him. I got there, and after a couple days in Da Nang processing and all that, they sent me out to a place called Dialogue Pass, which was the rear for 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. And from there, they sent me out to a place called Mike Tower, which was very remote. I think it was only manned by, I don't know, a couple of squads or something. They had a tower there, and minimal security, really. I mean, we Marines were big on putting wire out there, and you know, booby traps and stuff. But it just didn't seem like it was all that I was thinking it would be when the helicopter dropped me off there. And here I come, the new guy, and they said, your squad's over there. And I remember walking over to the squad, and there's these guys all in a circle, and they're talking. And now, I had gotten a Marine Corps tattoo, a bulldog, on my arm at Oceanside before going to Vietnam. We were in California and going through staging for Vietnam and all that.
Sure.
Well, I come walking out to the guys, and they look up at me, and they're probably thinking, oh, here comes the boot, you know? And I must have had a short shirt on or something, I don't know. But Scotty, we call him Scotty, his name was Scott Meredith. He looked up at me and he goes, you know all that stuff you learned in training? I said, yeah. He said, forget it. I thought, what? He said, you know, and years later we got in touch again. I'm in touch with him now, and you know, he said he saw that I was just one of these gung-ho boots by, you know, the way I was presenting myself and this tattoo that I obviously got, you know, in training. But yeah, I took the whole thing hook, line, and sinker. Being a Marine, I was very proud, still am, to have been a Marine. Well, to be a Marine. But I found out pretty soon what he was talking about. You know, it wasn't until our first firefight, and I was pinned down, and I had rounds going off near me, and I had a situation back in high school where my art teacher, who was a Korean or a Korean Marine in the Marine Corps, we didn't get along. We never saw eye to eye, and we had a couple of, you know, squaring off situations. And he told me when he found out I was going in the Marines, he says, first time you get in a firefight, you're going to freeze up. You know, and I always remembered that. In this first firefight, I was scared because I'd never been in a firefight before. No one ever shot at me, and I just remember him saying, "You're going to freeze," you know. And I said, "Damn it, I'm not going to freeze." And I took my weapon over the lip of this, wherever I was hiding behind, and I just started returning fire. So yeah, I remember that,
So a DI and a high school teacher.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Art teacher.
Yeah, that's even more. Yeah, and then of course we can talk about that in a minute too. That's a fantastic connection. So walk me through when you knew you were leaving the Corps. What did you have a plan? Did you have an idea? Did you just come back home? What was the initial phase for you?
When I was leaving Vietnam or discharged from the Marines?
Well, both. However that evolved. Yeah.
Well, when I was leaving Vietnam, I remember being on the back of this chopper and looking down at my buddies, and I remember waving to them, never thinking that I'd never see these guys again, because we were so tight.
Yeah.
And backing up a second though, my last 2 weeks in Vietnam, I caught a relapse of malaria. I had malaria early on in my tour.
Jeez.
And both times were pretty bad. But this relapse happened so close to me going home. And I remember being placed on a hospital ship. I'm not sure if it was the Repose or Sanctuary. It was a naval hospital ship. And I remember pleading with this Navy commander, a doctor. I told him, you gotta let me make my rotation date. I have a bad feeling that if I don't, I'm not gonna leave Vietnam alive.
Yeah.
And it must have been pretty convincing for him, because he signed me off. And from that point on, I had a hard time remembering my trip home, because I got back to where the unit was and processed out, and I left Vietnam. I went there private. I was private first class and left a sergeant. So I just remember, well, I don't remember is what I should say. I was so delirious. I remember we landed in Okinawa, and one thing that really struck me was there were protests going on at the gate, protesting us being there, civilians, and here they were telling us about, when you get back to the States, you should expect that, and I thought, wow, back to the States and here, and what's going on?
Yeah.
A lot was going on while I was away. While I was in Vietnam, that moon landing took place. I remember being in a hole, looking up and thinking, these guys are walking up there and I'm in this hole, Woodstock happened too. I remember being in the hospital in Da Nang, and a buddy of mine from back home worked at this hospital. It was First Med, Naval Hospital, and he came into the sick bay one day, and he had the paper from back home, the Courier Express, and on the front page it had 300,000 at rock concert, and again, I just couldn't relate to it.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm in this hospital here, and a lot of crazy stuff happened, while I was there. But I came back, and we were in, I think it was Okinawa, might have been the Philippines. Again, I was pretty delirious, but that happened with the protests, and next thing I knew, I was home. Excuse me. And I remember the drive from the airport to wherever they were taking us, and I think there were 5 of us Marines that were coming back from Nam, probably all of us grunts. We were on the LA freeway,
Okay.
and we're going one way, and on the other side, we see all the traffic's backed up, and I remember our traffic was slowing down as well, and we're looking over on the other side to see what was going on, and there was a terrible accident. They had bodies, I don't know how many, but they had them on gurneys, or and they had put sheets on them, and
Yeah.
blood was soaking through the sheets. And I just remember how silent that cab was. We were all looking there, we tuned in on it, and that was like the welcome home. I was very fortunate when I landed in Buffalo. All my friends and family showed up to welcome me, so that was great.
Yeah. And then once you were back in Buffalo, how did that initial transition? We can't become civilians again, but you became a veteran, right? Or at least you started your journey from active duty into being a veteran. What were some of the first steps, and did you look for work? How did that evolve? What were some of the things that went on in the next, we'll say, the transition phase?
Well, all my friends had changed. The ones that went to Vietnam, they changed as well. The ones that stayed home, they changed. They had long hair. Everybody was getting high and partying, and I think a lot of us that were in the service had done what we did. I know excuse me, I know we really didn't have tolerance for guys getting high in the bush. It just couldn't happen. I don't know how it was in other branches, but in the Marines it just wasn't tolerated.
Right.
However, when we went to the rear and we were in a secure area, some guys smoked weed, some went up and drank beer, some did both, because we were on supposedly a secure base, and we had that time where we could, relax and take a hot shower, have some hot chow and all that stuff. But I think more to fit in and to forget the Vietnam experience, I started partying pretty hard when I got discharged. Actually, when I got home, because it was everywhere.
Sure.
And none of it seemed to be working for me. Everything I tried, just intensified the Vietnam experience. I made it through that, and I don't know how. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I constantly worked out, even during my druggy days and drinking and drugging. It didn't matter. Even after I got discharged, and I started marathoning with some guys, veterans also. And the whole point of that for me was to clean out. Whenever I ran a marathon, I would have to stop drinking, stop drugging, and focus on 26.2 miles.
Sure. Yeah.
And afterwards, it was party time, So I'd find myself back in that hole again, and
it's like a vicious cycle.
oh, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and I had gotten married and started having kids and caught up in that mess. Things got pretty dark. They were just dark and almost just like Vietnam, but a different Vietnam. it was definitely a war. There were definitely casualties.
Right. And you probably felt a large portion of that you were, unlike Vietnam, you didn't have battle buddies around you. It was you versus you, or you versus the you know the darkness
Yeah,
there.
more so that, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So from there, how did the path clear for you? How did you start making some inroads there to the next chapter?
Well, don't ask me how I hung on to my sergeant stripes through that 2.5 years I had left to do when I came home from Nam.
Sure.
And I really didn't want to do it. I wasn't that
Right.
gung-ho
Right.
Marine anymore. I was just, I wanted to get out, you
Yeah.
know. And, but I hung on to the rank. And, well, again, you know, my boys were getting older. I had 3 sons. And I think they were pretty much getting hip to what was going on. Dad's got a problem, and I would, you know, I would have this problem with anger when I got back, big time. There was just too much going on inside there, and oftentimes I'd have, you know, fits, you
Sure.
know, or road rage or whatever, you
Yeah.
know, just. I think the running helped. You know, I could go out and do that on my own. I didn't need a squad to do it with. It was always nice when we got a few guys together and trained for a marathon. But, you know, you could do that on your own. It's one of those type of sports.
Sure.
And that was helpful. I still think to this day, and I know that's where I kind of left off, but that helped me find, you know, the right way back.
Sure.
It was a crazy teeter-totter. That's what I liken it to, and it never bottomed out or, you know, went either way and stayed. It was constantly doing this, rocking back and forth.
Sure. So then, let's explore the connection between art and your service and how that became. I mean, it's certainly how I became how I learned about you was through your fantastic artwork.
Thank you.
When did that really start to become an outlet for you and something that you saw as more than just a hobby? How did that kind of start?
Yeah. Well, I think I had the box of tools all the time. I just never knew how to open that box, and when I learned how to use those tools,
Right.
and I was very fortunate to sign up for classes at UB, and I met who would become my mentor, Walter Bruchonic, who to this day I believe is one of the best artists I've ever, certainly that I've ever known. Then there's my favorite artist, Picasso.
Yeah.
But Walter recognized what was going on with me. He was a World War II veteran who saw quite a bit of combat, and I think he saw that I was having problems for my time in Vietnam. And he even stuck up for me a few times, you know, with some teachers, professors from UB that I had kind of run-ins with, and he taught me the value of abstract expressionism. This was work that I just never could relate to as a kid when I started drawing and selecting my favorite artists and artwork. Whenever I'd look at a picture done by, you know, Kooning or any of those people who were throwing paint at the canvas and stuff like that. I just turned a page or walked past it. It didn't relate. I just didn't see any value in it. He taught me the substance that was in that work, and he taught me that what I had going on inside of me as a result of, being 23 and having experienced all this stuff already. He said you can't paint like you're used to doing anymore. You've got to paint what's inside and get that out, because up until that time I was a camera. That's all I was. I was looking at a still life on a table or whatever, and I would draw it as close to that object I was looking at as I could, and that was the stuff that the teachers praised. They were teaching and all that, and I believe that realism is the hub of art. So yeah, you have to learn realism, but at some point in time, you've got to branch off.
Yeah.
You've got to take some of those other spokes, those roads, so you can complete your wheel. And once I learned how to start getting some of the stuff out from inside onto the canvas, I couldn't paint one piece anymore, especially when I was talked into showing some of my Vietnam work at a Vietnam exhibit they were having at the Polish Community Center back in, I think it was early 90s or 93 or something. And I was approached by Pete Linkowski, and he was a great guy, very good man, a real fighter for veterans, especially Vietnam vets, but he was like that with any veteran. He approached me and he said, we're having this exhibit and we'd like you to show some of your Vietnam work. And I said, what Vietnam work? That was the last thing I thought of when I came back, was doing artwork,
right,
let alone Vietnam related artwork. Well, he talked me into it, and I don't know how I listened to him, but I did, and everything just fell into sights there, I wound up getting that stuff out that Walter was telling me had to come out in any way he could, and there were times I'd stand back 10 feet from the canvas and throw things at it, or I'd come up on it and run my nails across it, or especially the POW pieces. I really had a tough time with that, still do. That so many POWs, Americans, were unaccounted for during that war, any war, but of course the Vietnam experience hit home a lot closer. But those pieces were really digging down deep, place I had never come to before, art-wise, and finding their way on canvas and different mediums.
Yeah, that's what's. Yeah, I mean, you do. It seems like there's nothing you can't do, from what I've watched over the years. Like I said, I met you through your work on the Iraq and Afghanistan Memorial. You worked on several memorials and different types of. How did your interest expand so quickly? Was that driven by some of the classes you took, or just that you started to express yourself and you just need to find different things to try? How did that all manifest there?
Everything lined up at the same time. It was amazing. There's a lot of things I always wanted to do, excuse me, art-wise. One being I wanted to be a courtroom artist, try that out. I wanted to do police sketch work. I wanted to teach, and all of a sudden it all just lined up. There was a guy that called me. He used to do the courtroom drawings for the Buffalo News. He said, "I'm leaving town. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm interested." So I wound up, my first case was the James Kopp case.
Okay.
And I went in there and did my drawing, and the News got it, got my check. I thought, oh, this is nice. And and that continued to grow. I get called in occasionally to go in the courtroom when they don't allow cameras. The other was police department contacted me, Buffalo Police, and they had a rape case, and I interviewed the victim. She was with her mother. She was young, and came up with a description, and they wound up finding the guy the next day.
Wow.
Based on the drawing. They had copies of the drawing circulated to all the cruisers, and some police spotted this guy at a train station.
Wow.
That in itself, I've been rewarded over and over in my artwork. When you guys approached me to do the monument, when other groups approach me to, create a monument for their veterans group, I take that very seriously, and, it really touches my heart that people trust my vision to create something like that for them.
Yeah. And then you started teaching as well. How did that come about in some of the classes?
Teaching, yeah. Kenton Community Education approached me about teaching portrait or caricature. I was also doing sideline stuff. I was a stone hustler.
Sure.
And I would do signs, down on Allen Street during the 70s. I was rocking. I was doing so many signs that were mostly paintings. They involved the lettering, of course, the name of the establishment, but somehow I would sell them on the idea, well, you want this caricature too, or you want this to go with it. And that was really my strength, more so than the lettering itself of the business.
Sure.
And it was enough to make the sign. It gave it kind of an appeal.
Yeah.
And there was a time you could walk down Allen Street and see my signs all over the place, Reel me in again. Where am I going?
Well, so you started teaching with Ken.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's all right.
So then when that came time to give teaching a try, I decided, okay, I'm going to teach portrait and caricature. I've always been a people person with my art, so it just made sense that I would do the courtroom drawings, police sketch work, anything to do with the face.
Yeah.
I hate having these little lapses.
No, it's
here,
fine. Yeah, no.
But there's so much
Yeah.
to discuss. I forgot again.
No, you're fine. You're fine, Ralph.
Give it to me again.
Yeah. So you started teaching. So see, I thought there was like an evolve of different jobs that led to other jobs. It sounds like you were doing it all at the same time for a while.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
It's overwhelming. Yeah.
Because I wound up teaching my portrait and caricature class for over 20 years
Wow.
at Kenton Community Ed.
Yeah. 20
And
years.
it was evenings, and then I started doing Saturday mornings, and I would always bring models to the class, and
Yeah, I know one of those. Yeah.
yeah, our friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was fun, teaching. It's tough being an art teacher, because I was a very active artist at the time also. I was painting, and I was starting to have a couple shows here and there. Mostly group shows at that time. Just starting to get myself introduced into the art world around here. And I found that teaching community ed was a better bet for me, you know, as a teacher and an artist, because it seemed to me that if I had used my degree to teach art in schools or in college, I'd be in a compromising situation there, because you're teaching our students pretty much what's on the curriculum, you know.
Yeah, you'd be more structured.
Yeah.
The same structure you were fighting as a
Yeah,
student.
and I was fighting it. I was definitely fighting it. I was always looking for new areas in art. I mean, I could show you out in the garage now. I have two wood carvings, chainsaw carvings. I'm trying that out, you
That's
know.
great.
It's you know, it's one of those things that's been on the back burner for a while, because I have to really be in the mood to get the goggles on and all suited up
Sure.
to work with that. But I'm always into trying something new with art, you know.
Yeah.
And you can't. There were a lot of students that, you know, they weren't ever going to come to that with their art, you know. Maybe they just wanted to come and learn a little bit, because I often got that line, you know, well, I can't even do a stick figure, or that's all I could do.
Right.
And I would teach them to expand on that.
Yeah.
Okay, do that stick figure. And I'd show them how to beef up the calves and forearms, and then we'd work a session on just faces, expressions. So yeah, it's, you know, it's just such a fascinating field. And then I was blessed. The VA hospital, where I had been working all that time, juggling everything else and working at the VA. I started there in 77
Okay.
in the laundry.
Mhm.
And at that time they had a drywall, temporary drywall up, because they were upgrading, remodeling the laundry.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, the 8-hour day, you know, I'd have some time, and they'd keep me in magic markers, you know.
Yeah.
And what I do with them is draw caricatures, whole body caricatures of all the laundry workers.
I love it.
And then at the time, one day I was up on the ladder and I was drawing, because I was starting to run out of space at the bottom. And I was drawing one of the people up there, and I looked down and there's this guy with the head of the laundry, and it was Joe Paris, Mr. Paris. He was the director at the VA. What a great guy, you know, World War II vet. Really just went above and beyond for the vets, you know. Just, they don't make them like that anymore, directors.
Yeah.
Anyway, he called me down, you know. I came down, and he says, "You like doing this, huh?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I enjoy it. I've been drawing, and, you know, for a long time, all that." He said, "Well, come up and see me, you know." So I went up to see him in his office, and he said, "Would you like to do some murals in the lobby, in the main lobby?" So I did that. I painted these 3 murals. Of course, sometime later, somebody came in and had the idea. They were head of interior design, and Paris was gone, and they decided to repaint and new furniture and all that.
Yeah.
So under that paint job, there's 3 murals.
Yeah.
So, however, then came along an opening for a whole new position for Buffalo, for a whole visit, titled Creative Arts Therapist. And some folks believed I was a shoo-in for it because at the time I was going for my master's degree,
Mm-hmm.
and I was, I took more art, and I had a concentration in art therapy, and that was at Buff State. They were the only game in town for art therapy. So, next thing I knew, I had an 8-hour-a-day job doing art
Doing what you love.
with my vets.
And helping other vets.
Yeah, and sitting there talking about, drug addiction, alcohol, combat, things that these guys was very fresh in their minds and fresh in mine, and I tried to show them that, it's possible to deal with life and come out on top, Not that I was on top, but I was dealing with it.
Yeah.
I was showing up to work and
Just showing up is
Yeah.
half. I mean, that's more than half the battle.
yeah. But thank God, I was living and breathing art,
Yeah.
working an 8-hour-a-day job, getting called in the courtroom.
Yeah.
I remember when I was doing the Lackawanna 6 case. I had a great supervisor at the time. I'm not going to mention her name. I don't want her to get in trouble. Well, she's retired now anyway, but she had a lot of, I don't know, I guess faith in me, that I wasn't going to get in any trouble doing it, but that Lackawanna 6 case went on and on.
Yeah, that
I think
was
it
huge.
lasted
Yeah.
and I was in that courtroom daily.
Yeah.
So I had to use up time, and luckily she signed me off,
Yeah.
but I was in there a lot, and I couldn't believe the money I made in there. I mean, the very first day, I remember the night before getting a call from CNN Atlanta. They said, can you be in court tomorrow? Federal court. I said, sure, what's up? There's a suspected terrorist ring, and we'd like you to do some drawings. Well, I get down there, and it's mobbed.
Yeah.
That circle in front of City Hall there,
Yep.
news trucks, people from all over the world, Greenland, China, all over. I went in that courtroom, I think I was in there for maybe half hour, if that. It was the arraignment, so they just,
Right.
and I forgot who the judge was that did the arraignment. Later on, it was Judge Stratney, but for the arraignment, it was someone else. Anyway, I did these drawings. I think I did about 3 of them because I was doing caricatures. Don't forget.
Sure.
So I'd go to bar mitzvahs. I'd go to anything, just to, and those caricatures were preparing me for these courtroom drawings because there were cases that I did that, people that I had to get the drawings of for the 12 o'clock news or whatever news time it was. They'd come in, get them to the judge. They'd face the judge, turning their backs to me. Next thing I know, they'd turn around and leave. This happened with the Malvasi couple who assisted James Kopp in leaving the country. So now I had to have drawings or a drawing for 12 o'clock news for channel whatever. So we went back to the station and they pulled up on their video the couple arriving separately, to the court. And we'd freeze the frame and the figures that I had started in the courtroom on my paper, I'd complete them looking at the video. We'd just freeze them. But viewers didn't know that, And I had to do that every now and then. I learned some pretty crafty things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it was tough, to try and get these things done in such a small amount of time so often. When COVID hit, and I did the top shooter, I'd go in court for him, and also some woman who sent the president some
threats. Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I had to go and do her. I come into the courtroom, and the first thing I do when I go in is get a quick layout of the room. Chandeliers,
backgrounds.
Suggest any paintings on the walls and stuff like that. Well, they bring in, all these people start coming in and they're all wearing masks. And I'm thinking, well, this is cool. But I could do this. I just had to draw them and not worry about the entire mask, of the face.
Yeah.
I refer to the mask as the eyes, nose, and mouth.
Yeah.
Well, I've just eliminated 2 of them, so that was great.
That's great. So, well, I definitely, this has been a fantastic talk. We could probably do this for days and end. The everything you have been doing is just so incredible. I know you want to talk about, and I don't want to miss this, I know you want to talk about your current work that you're doing and how it relates to Parkinson's. And I want you to be able to share whatever you'd like with our audience so that we can, be aware of that. And it's very special to you, so I want to make sure everyone knows about this.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
About 2.5 years ago, maybe a little more, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And they say that may be a result from toxic water, Camplejune. I'm sure you've heard the commercials.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was another little something, a little gift that keeps on giving from Vietnam, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Toxic water, Lejeune, and then the Agent Orange thing in Vietnam.
A lot of studies about the Agent Orange and Parkinson's as well.
Yeah, so I'm finding now at 75 that, crazy things are happening to my body. I have these tremors with my left hand. Thank God it's the left hand. But in the beginning it started really getting me down because, I think I just chose to ignore it. And then I came to realize, I think I have a problem here. So actually it was Pam that recognized it, more and more. And she said, you have to go to a neurologist, which I did. Dr. Lickner at the VA, and he was the one that diagnosed me. And now I started noticing it more and more, watching a movie, whatever, or just holding the toothbrush, trying to squeeze the toothpaste on the brush,
Sure.
or things like that, holding a palette, my paint palette, and watching that shake. And I thought, I'm going to find something positive with this. I can't let it consume me, So I decided to create a series of work on my journey, my own journey in Parkinson's. I'm about 8 pieces into it now, and I'm hoping at some point in time to have a show of what I've got done so far, because as this disease progresses, as I'm sure it will, I'll hopefully continue to do artwork reflecting its progression in me. Around the time I got diagnosed with it, I got involved with the Parkinson's boxing gym, and I've been active there twice a week all this time. So I'll continue to try and do, I'll fight on my end of it.
Yeah.
But in the process, damn it, I'm going to do some artwork.
That's right.
And I have a feeling that people will find it, you know, and here comes that word again, but substance in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll surprise you how many people will be touched, moved, and
Well, I'm hoping I get a call and someone says, you know, would you like to have your show here?
yeah.
Because oftentimes that's the hardest part. You know, you have all this work that you feel so strongly about, and how do you share it? You know, I know there's people out there that like to come to my shows, you know, because I'm asked often, you know, when are you having another show? But you know, it's finding the right place, a secure place, a place with wheelchair access. Those are big things with me.
Of course. Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be great.
Well, folks, you heard it. You heard it from him straight there. So keep that in mind, and maybe find a good venue for you. And I like to think about. Ever since I've known you, it's fun for me to drive down Colvin, go to the Naval Park. It's fun for me to see things where I know you, like you mentioned, Allentown, even the old days where so many of your work was on display there. And I guess my reminder to you is that you have a show on display, not just through all the works that you've given our communities, and you think about all the newspapers you've been in and things like that, but also the works of all your students. You know, you've passed on things to them, just like people have passed things on to you, whether it be the drill instructor Apple or some of your mentors. You've been so gracious to share what you've learned with others. And you have a show out there in the works of all sorts of untold people from decades, you know. So I want to thank you for that, and I hope you're as proud of that as I am impressed with how much of your work's been out there.
Nothing but gratitude there.
Yeah. So
That's a rewarding thing for me, and I can always think about that people had that faith in my creative vision to say, you know, we'd like you to create this monument for the people that they were remembering.
Yeah, and again, that's touching lives on a level it's hard to put into words. So I just want to thank you for everything you've done, and as I try to do with all veterans, you know, welcome home. And I just hope you know that you've inspired a lot of people. You've inspired me personally. You know, I'm not an artist, but the Vietnam vets and everything that your cohort's gone through has always been a big part of my life. You know, I'm not, you know, my father served during that time. A lot of my relatives of that generation served at that time. I was fortunate enough to live in Erie County, which has a very large veteran population. So, you know, my neighbors, you know, everywhere you go, there's such a large percentage of this area that truly knows what sacrifice is. They did it themselves. They've seen it. They've sacrificed. If not them, someone in their family. And I know that coming home from that war was not the welcoming it should have been. But I've benefited personally from watching how your generation took that and flipped it. You know, the work that the Vietnam vets have done made all future veterans' lives much more easier in how we all transitioned out. So just like we've all had stories, and you shared today, where there was times in your life where maybe people were going to pass you by and thought you weren't going to do certain things, you flipped it. Well, as a cohort, the Vietnam veterans flipped what it is to be a veteran, and specifically a combat veteran. You know, now we have recognition. We have folks inviting us to tell our stories, even though there's a time where we didn't want to talk about it. We didn't want it in the paper, you know. So I just want to thank you, because without vets like you, there would not be the community that we have. And I gotta say this, I love how you stayed connected to some of those that you served with. I know you had a reunion and some other things, and that's key, right? That's something that all veterans need to do, is try to reconnect with folks we served with and make that unit camaraderie come back a little bit.
I'll go to my grave, being grateful for many things, but probably right up there in the top 2 or 3 would be having gotten my unit together. Hotel company, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, and back in back in the early or late 80s, I don't know, sometime in the 80s, I working at the VA, they had Leatherneck magazine and other service magazines readily available to us, and I'd always go to the back and look at the locator ads to see if anybody was looking for guys from my unit, for Mom, and never saw anything. So got to be around the 90s, I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it here in Buffalo. And I had contact with maybe about 3 guys from hotel company. And that led to 3 more guys. Because this guy knew that guy.
Right.
And it was just piecing little things together, clues. I became a bit of a sleuth. I'm a big Sherlock Holmes fan, by the way. But they made it kind of easy, The guy had red hair, so we called him Red.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Red. Well, Red was from Abilene. Now I had that.
Yeah.
So I would call the police department there in the city, identify myself, and I'm trying to locate this Marine. He would have been in at this time, and we only know him as Red.
Yeah.
And that's how I whipped up 39 people from my company showed up at the first reunion here in Buffalo in '95.
Yeah.
And that reunion's been happening every 2 years. And it's always quite the event.
Yeah, I love it.
We meet in a different city. Every last one was in Oklahoma City. And we have a good time. Wives, grandchildren, they're all coming now. And
that's got to be just fantastic. I'm going to a reunion for only the 2nd time. It's been 20 years for me, so our 20th is coming up. So I can only imagine seeing these folks every 2 years. It's got to be a riot.
And we're seeing less and less of them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, well, just keep it up, Marine. You're doing good work. So,
Right.
I want to thank you. I do have one final brief question. I always like to ask guests.
I was going to be prepared for this question.
Sure.
I really was. And now I forgot what it was.
That's okay. Yeah.
All right, hit me.
It's a fun one. It's just a fun little, sci-fi thing. I like time travel. You like Sherlock Holmes. That sort of things. So if you had a moment, just a brief moment, to go back in time and talk to young Ralph before the judge told him to, pick to serve or serve, knowing that you were going to go into the Marine Corps and knowing all the things you know now, is there something you would just share with young Ralph, just a brief amount of time that you would want to prepare or encourage him with?
I think I'd say pace yourself and keep doing those good things.
Awesome. Love it. That's why I asked the question. No one has the same answer twice. So, well, you certainly have been focusing on the light, and I'm proud of you for that, and I'm very, very grateful for everything you've done for our community.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, sir. It's been a pleasure. Folks, this has been a wonderful talk with Marine Corps Vietnam veteran Ralph Sirianni. If you're listening on the radio, please go to our website. We're going to have a wonderful display of just some of his artwork, and hopefully a show will be forthcoming, and we'll keep you updated on any developments and details.
And if you'd like, please visit my site. It's Sirianniart.com. SIRIANNIART.com.
Yep, and we'll have a picture of Ralph and his bio there, along with some links, including his site. So you can check that out anytime. And I want to thank you for listening, and please see what you can do to support him and his work and all the wonderful things that are out there that he's done, that he has gifted to us to enjoy. So go out and enjoy it. All right, Ralph, in your honor, this will air, and then I'll have a fun little song here in your honor. So stay tuned to this, folks, and I'll talk to you right after. Stand by.